open this up by saying that I send my prayers or my thoughts to Jim Inhofe, who is recovering from a major heart surgery just very unexpectedly. And the word I get is he's doing really well. And he's on the phone giving interviews on the radio, I'm sure, against any action on climate change. So I'm sure that he is up and running. But I'm so fond of Jim, and we all send our prayers and thoughts to him. So now I'm going to open up my remarks. Speaker Boehner and Republicans should open up the government by allowing a vote on a clean 6-week continuing resolution that has no riders attached. Then we should all meet on the long-term budget, put everything on the table for discussion. Of course, we also have to decide to pay our debts and our bills, which involves raising the debt ceiling, and that ought to be done right away as we approach that day. So really, we have two basic responsibilities as members of the Senate, members of Congress. One is you keep the government going. If you don't agree with some of the laws, that's your right. Try to repeal it. The Republicans tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act 43 times, I think. But the fact is, that's what elections are about. But that's not what governing is about. Governing is about making sure that we move this country forward, that we fund the laws that are on the books, the programs that are on the books. So we need to do that, and we need to pay the bills we incur. You have to know that there are no bills incurred without Congress's approval, so Congress has to pass a clean debt ceiling. So here's what's happening on the ground, just on the agencies that we oversee here in this EPW committee. 93% of employees at the Environmental Protection Agency have been furloughed. Hi, Bill. 93% of the employees at the EPA have been furloughed. And these employees are unable to ensure that our water is safe to drink and our air is safe to breathe. The shutdown has taken EPA inspectors off the job. And I have confirmed this. In my home state of California, there is not one single EPA inspector on the ground, not one. And every other state across this nation is facing a similar situation. What does it mean? It means that EPA cannot ensure that Clean Water Act safeguards are protecting people from polluters who might illegally dump toxic waste into our rivers, our lakes, and our streams. There are no EPA inspectors, which means that EPA cannot ensure that the Clean Air Act safeguards are protecting people from smog, toxic soot, and hazardous air pollution. Cleanup activities at 505 Superfund sites in 47 states have been delayed. That means that families who are living near these toxic waste sites, which are contaminated with serious toxins like arsenic, benzene, lead, and mercury, those families have to continue to worry that their children will get cancer or experience injury to their nervous system, to their brains, and other vital organs. At one heavily contaminated hazardous waste site in California, the Santa Susana Field Lab, the surrounding communities will have to continue to wait for EPA to review critical information needed to move forward with the cleanup, which has taken years and years and lawsuits, and they finally have an agreement, and now they're stalled once again. And I want to tell you about a community in California, and I have a picture here. The resolution on it isn't great. But this is a photo. It says 1,000 words. We have a wonderful community called University Park in Los Angeles. The families who are living near oil and gas operations have reported that children are suffering from recurring nosebleeds, respiratory ailments, and others are experiencing dizziness and headaches. Look at this child, he's so frightened. When I heard about this problem, I asked EPA to immediately address this terrible situation, and they said, absolutely. We had a similar situation in a place called Mecca, California, in a very poor community, and EPA got involved, and we solved the problem, and the families are feeling better, and the children aren't getting dizzy and sick. Thank you, Grant, for that. So now what's happened? This investigation has been derailed. We have another issue that's affecting our farm community. This is news that I just wanted to share with you that I just found out. EPA is responsible for the inventory and inspection of pesticides that are imported from abroad. Because EPA inspectors are not on the ground, pesticide products that have been imported are staying on the docks and they cannot be distributed across the country. If the shutdown continues, we've heard from California agriculture that processing plants could close down, jobs would be lost, and the tools necessary to protect their crops would not be available. The Safe Drinking Water Act is another critical protection that our families rely on. On tribal lands, only EPA is responsible for drinking water safety. Because of the shutdown, EPA cannot ensure the safety of drinking water in these communities. The American people count on EPA to ensure a safe and healthy environment, and EPA is supported by 75% of the people. But because of the shutdown, EPA cannot verify that the air we breathe and the water that we drink meet federal standards. And they have to stop their work on important environmental safety programs like the ones I showed you. Another example of damage caused by the government shutdown is the shuttering of the Chemical Safety Board, and you're going to hear from the chairman. This chairman is one of my heroes because he speaks truth to power. That agency investigates chemical explosions and other disasters that occur in industrial facilities across the nation. The Chemical Safety Board has furloughed 37 of their 40 employees. That means if any explosions at industrial facilities happen during the shutdown, they won't be investigated, and it also means that ongoing investigations have stopped. Let me tell you how that affects local communities in this nation. In April, there was a massive explosion and fire at the West Fertilizer Plant in West Texas. At least 14 people died. Hundreds of people were injured. Homes, businesses, and 3 unoccupied schools were damaged or destroyed. CSB's, the Chemical Safety Board's critical work in West, has been shut down. The shutdown is also causing harm to the country because of the important work of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that is not getting done. Businesses and families rely on the Corps to approve the construction of roads, bridges, houses, and commercial buildings when they impact our rivers and streams and wetlands. A lot of people don't realize the Corps has to issue permits, building permits, to ensure that those who wish to build near these lands and waterways can do it. The shutdown is already delaying the approval of these projects, which are very important to local economies. These projects will be halted altogether if the government shutdown continues just a few more days. Planned flood protection projects that are critical to protecting lives and property are threatened by the shutdown. The Corps has already closed parks, campgrounds, marinas, turning families away in 20 states. We all know how horrible it is to see the national park shut down. Well, the Corps maintains a huge amount of public lands for recreation. Now, one of the many sites that shuttered is Lake Texoma, which is the 12th largest lake in the U.S. and one of the most popular federal recreation facilities in the country, with more than 7 million visits annually. This Army Corps recreational area, located on the Texas-Oklahoma border, includes 10 campgrounds with over 700 individual campsites. And if the shutdown continues, campgrounds and other recreational sites in more states are expected to close in the coming days. What does that mean for local businesses? It means, frankly, death by 1,000 cuts. Just talk to my people in Mariposa County, California, near Yosemite. They don't know if they're going to make it through. They really don't. All 561 national wildlife refuges are closed because of the shutdown. Hunting season is in full swing. This means sportsmen will be turned away from popular hunting areas, including Sacramento, the Lower Klamath, and California, which hosted thousands of hunters in the first 3 weeks of October last year. The shutdown also jeopardizes National Wildlife Refuge Week, scheduled for October 13th to October 19th. All events scheduled for that week will be canceled if the shutdown continues, and these events provide critical economic support for rural economies. Highways and bridge projects are also critical to the economy, and they have to go through environmental process. These projects are threatened by a shutdown because the people in these resource agencies aren't there. They have to be taken off the job. Another casualty is the WERDA bill. You know how proud we were to pass that bill, how important it is to our communities. That bill was supposed to be on the floor of the House this week, and we hear now it won't be. Now maybe Speaker Boehner will get this clean bill done and go back to regular order. That's many, many, many jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs at stake, 500,000 to be exact. We passed our bill in May, it was going to happen, we were ready for the conference, and now it's stalled. So here's my wrap-up. This government shutdown is having a widespread damaging effect on the health and safety of the American people and our economy. The few examples of the harm caused by the shutdown that I touched on today, they only begin to tell a part of the story because you don't have all the time to hear all the stories, and I don't either. But the longer the shutdown continues, the greater the damage will be. There is a simple solution. Speaker Boehner, bring the clean bill up, vote on it, do the same with the debt ceiling, and then we can talk about every single topic through the regular order. We want to do that. We're ready to do that. We're willing to do that. We're able to do that. But first we have to do our most basic job. Keep the doors of government open and pay our bills. And with that, I would call on Senator Cardin.
Day 8 of the shutdown. Senator Boxer, thank you very much for bringing us together to point out to the American people the harm that's being caused as a result of this shutdown. Senator Nelson, thank you very much for your leadership on this issue of bringing out consistently on the floor of the United States Senate the harm that's been caused to our country as a result of this shutdown. Today we're concentrating on the impact it has on our environment, on our health, on our economy. Over 9 out of every 10 employees at the Environmental Protection Agency is furloughed, not at work today. I have the honor of chairing the Water and Wildlife Subcommittee in the Environment and Public Works Committee. And I know that the people of this country want the policies that protect our water and our wildlife to be based upon the best science available. That's what they want. That's what they want us to do. Well, today, 8,000 employees at the Fish and Wildlife are furloughed. Some of the brightest scientists in the world are home today rather than doing their work to protect, give us the information so that we can have the right rules and regulations to protect our environment. It's affecting clearly the public health. There is no question about it. When you deny the information you need in order to do what's right for protecting clean water and wildlife, you're affecting public health. There's no question about the impact it's having. The monitoring and enforcement is not being done the way that it should be done. And we have put public health at greater risk, and we've put our environment at greater risk. But as Senator Boxer points out, it's more than just the public health and the environment, it's also our economy. And I appreciate you mentioning that the National Wildlife Refuges are closed. This is October, one of the busiest months of the year for our National Wildlife Refuge. Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge, located on the eastern shore of Maryland, is closed today. Talk to the people on the eastern shore of Maryland. Ask them in Cambridge what impact it's having on their economy. Ask the restaurant owner that now sees half the tables empty that would have been filled as a result, whether that shop owner will be able to survive or not. That's what's at stake here. Blackwater is critically important to the local economy of the eastern shore of Maryland, and it's been damaged greatly as a result of this government shutdown. Well, let me give you another example, which I found out this morning. Harbor Point, which is one of the most important economic programs in Baltimore. It's a RCRA site. It requires the EPA to approve the economic plans for the use of that site. We have a local plan. Exelon's going to locate their regional headquarters on that site. It's a huge economic development for Baltimore, in downtown Baltimore. It is an incredibly important project. Well, today it's on hold as a result of EPA not being able to participate in the decision-making process to move that forward. This shutdown is harming people. It's harming people's health, it's harming economic opportunities, harming our country, and it's extremely, extremely costly. So, Senator Boxer, you're right. Our message is clear to Speaker Boehner: vote on opening up government. I want to, I know that the Republicans continue to say that we should be negotiating, and we've made that clear that we've always been willing to negotiate on any issue, but you can't do it with a gun at your head. Let me just quote from this morning's Baltimore Sun papers, if I might, because I think they say it better than I could, and it's a little bit more objective than what a Democratic senator might be saying. And I quote from this morning's editorial: "A negotiation takes place when two or more parties are in dispute, or rather than one getting a whole pie, they split it. Most everything that emerges from a legislative body is a compromise of some sort, including the Affordable Care Act, which lacked the public option Barack Obama promoted when he first ran for president in 2008. Passing a clean continuing resolution, keeping government fully operating at a funding level the GOP has already endorsed, is no compromise. It's status quo. Raising the debt ceiling isn't a concession either. It allows the nation to pay the bills Congress has already incurred and prevents the possibility of a government default, which would hurt the economy, raise borrowing costs, and increase the federal deficit." So when Speaker Boehner lashes out at President Obama for failing to negotiate, one has to ask, what is this thing he describes as negotiations? House Republicans are not merely leveraging their political position, some dryly claim, they are threatening to do grievous harm to the global economy and the American public. The gun isn't raised the president's head or the Senate's. The Democrats have, the gun isn't raised the President Obama's head or the Senate's. The Democrats have no particular stake in passing a continuing resolution or raising the debt ceiling other than keeping public order or doing what a reasonable person expects Congress to do. No, the gun is raised at the nation as a whole. That's why descriptions like ransom and hostage are not mere hyperboles. They're as close as the English language gets to accurately describing the GOP strategy. It's time for Mr. Boehner to put down the gun and put more faith in the democratic process.
Senator Nelson from Florida, so happy to have you with us.
Barbara and Ben, I'll be very quick. I want to get to our guest. Let's remember the reason that we are in this conundrum. A small group in the House want to have it their way to defund the Affordable Care Act and thus have caused the shutdown. Senator Boxer, Senator Cardin have enumerated a number of things. I could go on and on. I can tell you about the wildlife refuges all over this country and about the kayak renters and the bait stores and the little mom and pop restaurants that are all hurting. I could tell you about national wildlife refuges that have a concurrent activity with another part of government, such as the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, co-located with the Kennedy Space Center. All of those tours at the Kennedy Space Center are shut down. Or I can tell you about one of the major environmental restoration projects in this entire country, which these two senators have helped me so much with. and that is Everglades restoration. And the fact that all those civilians at the Corps of Engineers are on furlough, they can't work up those projects as we are racing a deadline to get certain projects through with the blessing in the chief's report in order to keep that Everglades restoration going on, which is so critical to the quality of life and the quality of life of the critters and the flora. And so we could keep talking all day about examples. There is real hurt going on in this country, and it's time for folks like you to start slamming your fist down and saying, we've had enough of this.
Thank you so much, Bill. And so now we're going to hear from Debbie Manns. Debbie is the Executive Director of New York, New Jersey Baykeepers. She's co-chair of the Passaic River Superfund Community Advisory Group.
My name is Debbie Manns, and I'm the Executive Director of New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, and one of the co-chairs of Passaic River Superfund Community Advisory Group. Yes, an assist from the Senate. Thank you. The Lower Passaic River and Newark Bay were stolen from the people of New Jersey by industrial pollution. Now our communities are left with one of the largest in-water Superfund sites in the country. We cannot swim or fish in the river without risking our health because of the poisonous sediment. The government shutdown has already caused real-world damage to our work to clean up this Superfund site. Because of the shutdown, funds to help inform and give the community a voice in this extremely complex cleanup have been put on hold. Meanwhile, the companies that polluted the river are still trying to undermine a clean and strong cleanup. The shutdown has also halted EPA's technical assistance to the Community Advisory Group, but perhaps most critically, the shutdown has delayed work needed to develop a cleanup plan for the lower 8 miles of the Passaic River site, further delaying a long-awaited cleanup. Communities along the river are fighting and waiting for a full cleanup to make them whole. With the government shutdown, it looks like we will have to keep waiting. Thank you.
So much. Our next speaker is Dr. Rafael Moure-Eraso. He is the chairman of the U.S. Chemical Safety Board. And I said before, one of my heroes because he came before us after the West Texas explosion and just told us exactly what we had to do. We followed his lead, and he's going to talk about what happens right now because most of his people are on furlough.
Thank you very much, Senator Boxer. I have to say that we share the love that you have for us, I have to say.
Thank you.
So I thank you very much for inviting me here today. The government shutdown has had a severe impact on the Chemical Safety Board. Our primary mission is to investigate the causes of industrial chemical disasters, such as the recent explosion in West Texas. We are a scientific, non-regulatory federal agency that recommends how to protect communities from these tragedies. We have 41 employees, half of whom are professional accident investigators with highly technical skills. The shutdown has forced us to furlough virtually the entire agency and halt all of our work. This includes our investigation at West Fertilizer, where we were systematically finding out why the explosion happened, the explosion that killed 15 first responders and others and destroyed much of the town of West Texas. Also frozen are our investigations at refinery fires and explosions in California, Washington State, Utah, and Texas, all of which have important findings for communities, businesses, and for the security of our nation's energy supplies. Of course, the shutdown impact is much larger than just the Chemical Safety Board. Our sister regulatory agencies that oversee these industries, like the EPA and OSHA, have had to halt routine inspections of hazardous chemical processes. I am also concerned about the impact on our own staff. It has taken years to recruit dedicated scientists and engineers and other talented experts to conduct our work. They can easily be lost back to higher paying jobs in the private sector. Most importantly, if a major chemical accident were to happen in an American community tomorrow, we have no ability to respond. And I think that is true of much of the government. And so we all just hope and pray that the shutdown ends soon. Thank you again for having me here this morning.
Thank you so much. We're going to hear from Birgit Vertesh, Executive Director of the Darling Wildlife Society in Sanibel Island, Florida.
Thank you. National Wildlife Refuges are economic engines for our local communities. Just on Sanibel Island alone, we get nearly 800,000 visitors from around the world. For every dollar that's appropriated from the federal government to Ding Darling, nearly $30 is generated in the local economy. And that's major for our very small island of Sanibel and Captiva both. These are people who come and use the hotels, who come and use the kayaks, who rent bicycles, who eat in restaurants, who shop in stores. And that is, the longer the government is closed, the more of an impact it's making. The one that was directly hit is the business that does all of the tours on refuge land. They give the kayak tours and the bus tours and educational tours. They have had to lay off 23 employees. Those are not government employees. They've lost their jobs. They have no idea when they're going to be able to come back. They have bills to pay, and they're directly impacted by the shutdown. There are 561 refuges, as Senator Nelson has said, 38 wetland management districts, and more than 40 million people visit those every year from around the world. They want to see the critters. They want to see, everything is, because there's less and less wild space for people to enjoy, and the wildlife refuges are a way to do that. We have had to cancel one of our events. We're looking with National Wildlife Refuge Week, having to cancel our big week-long festival that brings in 5,000 people during what we call our slow season. And again, these are people that eat in the restaurants, that rent the bicycles, that are out there to enjoy the refuge and participate in the local businesses, and everybody is being impacted. So we are, the nonprofit arm that helps to support the refuge in the areas that they don't get federal support, and we're very concerned about the continuing closure of the government for this reason. I'm speaking on behalf of just one refuge, but there are 561 others, and the local communities within those areas are being impacted very negatively by this closure. So thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. I want to say, as Birgit was talking, I was thinking that the people in the tourist industry, which in California, that's our third largest industry. We're 38 million people. This is a very big deal to us. And they have to worry normally just about things they can't control, like the weather. Is there going to be a hurricane? Is there going to be a flood? Is there going to be a drought? Is there going to be a fire? Now, they're having to deal with a self-inflicted hurricane by the right wing of this country on their livelihoods, and it's unnecessary. And to close, we're going to call on Dr. Pete Ruane. Anyone who works in this transportation field knows Pete. He is dynamic, and he's a can-do person, and I'm so proud that he's here with us today. Pete?
Thank you, Chairman Boxer, Senator Cardin, Senator Nelson. I think that Chairman Boxer very graciously acknowledged Senator Imhoff's recent surgery. I think that is reflective of the civility and the bipartisanship that is a hallmark of this committee. I must say, though, Chairman Boxer, that if he was here, he probably would quip that his surgery did not require an environmental impact statement. So,
Absolutely, I'm sure, you're right.
folks, improving the efficiency and environmental review and approval process was one of the signature achievements of the 2012 Surface Transportation Law, MAP 21. Achieving this goal was a clear priority for members of Congress from both parties and chambers. Major highway and bridge projects can take between 9 and 19 years to complete. largely due to inefficiencies in the review process that delay needed mobility and safety improvements. Non-transportation agencies that play major roles in the review process for transportation projects include the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Fish and Wildlife Service. Now let's put this in context. The Federal Highway Administration states that as of late August, there are 129 projects from 35 states currently undergoing the environmental impact statement process. Due to furloughs in the environmental resource agencies, however, the approval process for transportation projects is encountering major obstacles. This outcome, ironically, is the exact opposite of the goals of MAP 21's streamlining provisions. There are two things the construction industry needs to deliver the transportation network that moves our economy: adequate and reliable funding and approved projects. The fact remains that if environmental regulators can't do their job, we can't do ours. Thank you.